You spend 7 years convincing yourself he never cared. You build a version of him in your head, and cold, absent, a man who chose silence over his own daughter. Then one Thursday night, the phone rings at 11:52 p.m., and a voice you haven't heard in years says 4 words that unravel everything you thought you knew. I'm already on my way. You are Thessaly Winslow. You are 36 years old. You live in a rented brick duplex on the edge of Tulsa, Oklahoma, with your daughter, Zinnia, who is 9, missing one front tooth, and obsessed with drawing constellations on the back of every school worksheet she brings home. 7 years ago, your husband, Barnaby Kingsley, left. Not with shouting, not with betrayal you could point to and name, just a slow erosion. Long shifts at the refinery that became longer. A man who came home and looked through you instead of at you. When the papers finally came, he signed them in under a minute. In the parking lot of a Waffle House, engine still running. You told yourself that was the proof you needed. He never really wanted this life. Not you, not the marriage. And, though it took years to admit, maybe not even Zinnia, you built a life out of sheer stubbornness. You became a labor and delivery nurse at St. Francis, working the kind of shifts that leave your feet aching and your patience threadbare. You learned to replace a garbage disposal from a YouTube video at 1 a.m. You learned to sit through every parent-teacher conference alone, answering the inevitable question, "Is Dad joining us today?" With a smile that cost you more than anyone in that room ever knew. Zinnia barely remembers her father. She has one photograph, Barnaby, 28 years old, holding her at 14 months, both of them laughing at something just out of frame. And sometimes, rarely, she asks about him. You always find a reason to change the subject. It isn't cruelty. It's self-preservation. Some doors you've learned are safer left shut. It's a Thursday in late October. The kind of Tulsa evening where the wind smells like the first real cold snap of the year. Zinnia comes home from school pale, holding her side, saying her stomach feels like a fist. You think it's the cafeteria pizza. You give her ginger ale, put her to bed early, tell yourself it'll pass by morning. By 9:40, she's crying in a way you've never heard from her. Not the crying of a child who's scared, but the crying of a body in genuine distress, curled so tightly around herself that she can't straighten out. By 9:55, you're in the car, hazards flashing, running the light on 71st Street because there's no one behind you to hit. Zinnia moaning in the back seat in a voice that makes your hands shake so badly you nearly miss the turn into the ER bay. The doctor's face changes the second he presses 2 fingers into her lower right abdomen. Appendicitis, possibly. Already ruptured. They wheel her back before you've even finished signing the consent forms. Your signature coming out as a jagged, unrecognizable scrawl. You are alone in a hallway that smells like bleach and fluorescent light. You call your sister in Dallas, straight to voicemail. You call your mother, no answer, it's after 10 in her time zone. Your hands are trembling so hard the phone nearly slips out of them twice. And then, without fully deciding to, your thumb hovers over a name you haven't dialed in 3 years. Barnaby. You don't know why you do it. Maybe because Zinnia is his daughter too. Whatever he has or hasn't earned in the years since. Maybe because terror in a hospital hallway at 11 p.m. doesn't care about 7 years of silence. You call. It rings twice. He picks up. Thessaly. His voice is startled. You never call, not once in 3 years. It's Zinnia. Your voice cracks in half. Her appendix ruptured. She's in surgery. You can't finish. Silence for 1 full second. Then, I'm already on my way. You expect nothing more. You've expected nothing from him for 7 years. And expecting nothing has kept you upright. You hang up, sink into a plastic chair, and start bargaining. With a God you stopped fully, believing in around year 4 of doing this alone. 45 minutes pass. You've cried twice, apologized to a passing nurse for blocking the corridor with your grief, and rehearsed, in your head, exactly how disappointed you'll allow yourself to be when he doesn't show. Then you hear it. Fast footsteps, too fast for a hospital hallway, and you look up. Barnaby is running, not walking. His flannel shirt is buttoned wrong, like he grabbed it in the dark without checking. His work boots are untied. He looks like a man who left his house the instant he hung up the phone and hasn't stopped moving since. Like he drove from Bartlesville to Tulsa in under 40 minutes, which, you'll learn later, is almost exactly what he did. He doesn't say hello. He doesn't bring up the years between you. He drops into the chair beside you and asks, "What exactly did the doctor say?" "Word for word, Thessaly." You tell him. He listens like every syllable weighs more than his own pulse. Then he does something you don't expect. He reaches over and takes your hand. Not romantic, not a man trying to find his way back into a life he abandoned. Just a father, terrified, reaching for the only other person on earth who understands exactly how terrified he is. She's tough, he says, more to himself than to you. She's always been tough. You almost say something bitter. Now you show up. Now you remember she's tough. But the words die when you notice his hand is shaking as badly as yours. The next 2 hours are the longest of your life. Barnaby paces the length of the hallway, asks the charge nurse for updates 3 separate times, apologizing each time for asking again. At one point, he disappears and comes back with a bottle of water, pressing it into your hand without a word, because he remembers, after 7 years, that you forget to drink water when you're falling apart. You watch him and something in you cracks open just slightly. Not forgiveness, not yet, but recognition. This is still the man who sat up 3 nights straight with newborn Zinnia so you could sleep. This is still the man who cried, actually cried, the first time she called him Dada. Somewhere in 7 years of silence, you'd let yourself forget that man had ever existed at all. I should have let you see her more, you admit quietly, staring at the floor tiles. She barely knows you. Barnaby is silent for a long moment, jaw tight. I let that happen, he finally says. I told myself distance was a mercy, that a broken father was worse than an absent one. I was wrong. I wasn't protecting her, Thessaly. I was protecting myself from having to feel like I'd failed her every single day. It's the most honest sentence he's spoken to you in a decade. At 1:35 a.m., the surgeon finally comes through the double doors. Surgery went well. The appendix had ruptured, but they caught the infection before it could spread further. Zinnia will need several days of recovery, but she's going to be fine. You and Barnaby exhale at exactly the same moment. A sound that comes out closer to a sob than a breath. You're allowed back first. Zinnia is groggy, disoriented, asking for you in a small, cracked voice. You hold her hand, tell her she's safe. Then you step aside so Barnaby can go in. You watch through the narrow window in the door. Zinnia opens her eyes, confused for a second. She hasn't seen her father's face in almost 14 months. Then recognition breaks across her features. "Daddy?" she whispers. Barnaby doesn't just sit beside her. He reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out a small, worn photograph, the same one you have. Him at 28, holding Zinnia at 14 months. Both of them laughing. He's carried it in his wallet every single day for 7 years. I carry this everywhere I go, he tells her, voice breaking. I've never once stopped being your dad, Zinni. I just got so scared of doing it badly that I stopped doing it at all. That was my mistake. Not yours. Never yours. You didn't call him tonight because you needed him. You realized, standing in that hallway, that some quiet part of you called him, because it still believed, despite everything, that Zinnia deserved a father who would drive 40 minutes through the dark for her, even after years of silence. You just never expected him to actually prove it. You find him at 6 a.m., asleep in the hospital recliner, still in his crooked flannel shirt, one hand resting near Zinnia's on the bed rail. As if even unconscious, he refuses to let go. You don't wake him right away. You just study this flawed, absent, deeply imperfect man who nonetheless dropped everything the moment his daughter needed him. And you think about the story you've told yourself and told Zinnia. For 7 long years, he just didn't care enough to stay. Maybe that story was never entirely true. Maybe some people don't leave because love runs out. Sometimes they leave because they're drowning in their own inadequacy and mistake distance for mercy. It doesn't erase 7 years of absence. It doesn't repair everything by morning. But it cracks open a door you'd convinced yourself was sealed for good. 3 weeks later, Barnaby picks Zinnia up every single Sunday. He arrives 15 minutes early. He never once cancels. One evening, Zinnia draws something new. Not a constellation this time, but 3 stick figures standing in front of a hospital, holding hands beneath a crooked yellow sun. She hands it to you and says simply, "This is the night Daddy came back." You pin it to the refrigerator. Not because 7 years of hurt vanish overnight, not because every wound is healed, but because sometimes the people who feel the most impossibly far away are still only one phone call from finding their way back to who they used to be, and who, deep down, they never fully stopped being. If you'd give someone a second chance after they finally showed up, even years too late, tell me in the comments below. And if this story reached you, subscribe for next week, when we tell the story of a woman who found a letter from her late mother 20 years after her funeral, and what it said changed the rest of her life.